The Houston sun hung low, casting a golden haze over the sprawling campus of Clearview High School. Maya Williams stepped off the school bus, her sneakers hitting the pavement with a soft thud. The air was thick with the fading warmth of summer, laced with the scent of fresh grass and asphalt. She adjusted the straps of her worn backpack, her dark eyes scanning the unfamiliar faces milling around the school's entrance. Laughter and chatter filled the space, but Maya felt like a shadow moving through it, detached, unnoticed, and determined to keep it that way. This was her fourth school in 3 years. Most kids moved because of their parents' jobs or new opportunities. Maya moved to outrun her past, to start fresh where no one knew her story. Clearview High wasn't anything special, just another suburban school, filled with middle-class kids who'd grown up together, their social order carved in stone long before Maya arrived. The football team was decent, the cheerleaders were loud, and the pecking order was clear. Maya's plan was simple: blend in, stay quiet, and avoid trouble. Inside, the hallways buzzed with the chaos of a new school day. Lockers clanged shut, sneakers squeaked on polished floors, and teachers shouted over the noise to herd students into classrooms. Maya clutched her schedule, navigating the crowded corridor with practiced ease. She'd done this before. New school, new faces, same routine. Find her locker, scope out a lunch spot, and identify the kids to steer clear of. That's when she saw him. Bryce Carter stood out like a storm cloud in a clear sky. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a quarterback's build and an air of untouchable confidence, he leaned against a row of lockers, surrounded by a pack of Letterman jacket-wearing guys. Their laughter was loud, forced, the kind that came from trying to impress someone who held all the power. Bryce's presence dominated the hallway, not just because of his looks or his status as the star athlete, but because of the way people reacted to him. Some laughed too hard at his jokes. Others shifted nervously when his gaze landed on them. Maya recognized his type instantly, a king in a small kingdom, thriving on control and intimidation. She had no intention of crossing his path, but trouble has a way of finding those who want to avoid it most. As she passed by, someone's shoulder clipped hers hard. Her book spilled across the floor, pages fluttering. A few students turned to watch, some snickering. Maya dropped to her knees, gathering her things, her cheeks burning but her expression blank. She didn't need to look up to know who was behind this. Well, what do we have here? The voice was smooth, mocking, with a dangerous edge. Bryce Carter. Maya kept her focus on her books, ignoring the chuckles from his entourage. She stood, brushing off her jeans, and started to walk away. But Bryce wasn't done. "Hey, new girl. I'm talking to you." His tone carried a challenge, the kind that demanded a response. Maya stopped, her back to him. The hallway seemed to hold its breath, students pausing to see what would happen. Slowly she turned, meeting his gaze. Bryce's eyes glinted with amusement, but there was something else there, curiosity, maybe, at her lack of fear. "You don't talk much, do you?" he said, crossing his arms, his smirk widening. "What's your deal?" Maya's voice was quiet but steady. "You shouldn't have done that." Bryce laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "Oh yeah, and why's that?" She didn't answer. Instead, she held his stare for a moment longer, then turned and walked away. The weight of his gaze followed her, but she didn't look back. She knew his type too well. Guys like Bryce didn't let things go. And she knew this was only the beginning. The rest of the day passed in a haze. Maya kept to herself, sitting at the back of classrooms, speaking only when called on. At lunch, she found a quiet corner of the cafeteria, away from the central table, where Bryce and his crew held court. Their laughter echoed across the room, loud and performative, but every so often, Maya caught Bryce glancing her way. She ignored him, focusing on her food, but she could feel the storm brewing. By the time the final bell rang, Maya was ready to escape the suffocating energy of Clearview High. The Houston heat pressed against her as she headed toward the bus. Stop, her phone in hand. That's when she heard it. Hey, new girl, she turned. Bryce stood there, hands in his pockets, his signature smirk plastered across his face. A few of his friends lingered behind, watching like vultures waiting for a show. What do you want? Maya asked, her tone flat. Bryce took a step closer, his height casting a shadow over her. You've got a real attitude, you know that? Maya didn't flinch. Instead, she let out a short, dry laugh that caught him off guard. And you think you're something special? His smirk faltered, just for a second, before he recovered. You think you're tough, huh? Acting like you're better than everyone else. Maya tilted her head, her voice low and deliberate. I don't think I'm better than you, Bryce. I just think you should walk away. He laughed, but it was forced, his eyes narrowing. And why's that? She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Because you don't know who I am. Bryce opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, a low, guttural roar cut through the air. A black Dodge Charger Hellcat pulled up to the curb, its sleek frame gleaming in the sunlight. The tinted window rolled down, revealing a man whose presence needed no introduction. Vang Diesel sat behind the wheel, his eyes locked on Bryce. Color drained from Bryce's face. His friends froze, their bravado evaporating. Maya gave Bryce one last look, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Still think I'm just some random girl? She didn't wait for an answer. She walked to the car, slid into the passenger seat, and the Charger peeled away with a growl that echoed through the parking lot. The crowd that had gathered stood in stunned silence, their whispers already spreading like wildfire inside the car. The hum of the engine filled the silence. Maya leaned back, her fingers tapping lightly against her knee. The city blurred past, the golden light of late afternoon painting the streets in warm hues. Vang glanced at her, one hand on the steering. Wheel, you good? He asked, his voice calm but laced with concern. Maya nodded, then let out a small laugh. That was a bit much, wasn't it? Vin's lips twitched into a half smile. A little. She sighed, staring out the window. I didn't want them to find out like that. Vang raised an eyebrow. And how were you planning to handle it? Let that kid walk all over you? Maya shook her head. I wasn't going to let him. I was just waiting. For what? For the right moment. Vang chuckled, a deep, warm sound. You're sounding like me now. Maya smirked, glancing at him. That's a terrifying thought. He laughed, shaking his head. Smartass. They drove in comfortable silence, the tension from the day slowly melting away. But Maya knew this wasn't over. Bryce Carter wasn't the type to back down, and fear could turn to anger faster than most people realized when they pulled into the driveway of their modern, tucked-away home in a quiet Houston suburb. Maya hesitated before getting out. Vang noticed, his eyes narrowing slightly. Something else on your mind? She exhaled, her fingers tightening around her backpack strap. He's not done with me. Vang studied her for a long moment. No, but you're not done with him either. Maya met his gaze, a spark of determination in her eyes. I know. The next morning, the school was a different place. Whispers followed Maya through the halls, eyes tracking her every move. The story of Vang Diesel pulling up in his Charger had spread like wildfire, and now she was no longer just the new girl. She was the girl with a connection no one could ignore. Bryce was at his usual spot by the lockers, surrounded by his crew, but there was a tension in the air. His friends threw glares her way, their loyalty to him unwavering, but Maya could sense the shift. Some students were curious, others amused, and a few were starting to question Bryce's untouchable status. She kept her head high, walking past without acknowledging him. It was a small act, but it hit harder than any comeback could. Bryce thrived on reactions, and she refused to give him one dot by lunchtime. The tension had thickened. Maya was carrying her tray to her usual spot when one of Bryce's friends, Ryan, a burly linebacker with more bravado than brains, stuck out his foot. She stumbled, her tray wobbling, but she caught herself before anything fell. The cafeteria quieted, all eyes on her. Ryan grinned, leaning back in his chair. "No comeback, princess?" Maya straightened, fixing her tray. "I didn't realize Neanderthals still roamed the earth." A ripple of laughter spread through the room. Ryan's grin faltered, and Bryce's eyes narrowed. He'd been watching, waiting for her to crack, but Maya just walked to her table and sat down, eating as if nothing had happened. She wasn't surprised when she found her locker trashed that afternoon. Her books were scattered across the floor, the metal door scribbled with marker. A crowd had gathered, some snapping photos, others whispering. Bryce stood across the hall, watching, waiting for her reaction. Maya didn't give him one. She knelt, picked up her books, and stacked them neatly. Her hands were steady, her face calm. When she stood and closed her locker, she met Bryce's gaze for a brief moment before walking away. The lack of response unnerved him more than any outburst could. That night, Maya sat at the kitchen table, her fingers tapping rhythmically against the wood. Veng leaned against the counter, watching her closely. "They trashed my locker today," she said, breaking the silence. Veng raised an eyebrow. "That's their big move?" Maya smirked. "For now." He nodded, crossing his arms. "So what's yours?" She was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "I'm going to let him bury himself." Veng's grin widened. "That's my girl." Maya leaned back, feeling a sense of control settle over her. Bryce thought he was playing a game, but he didn't realize he was already losing. Over the next few days, Maya played her part perfectly. She walked through the halls with quiet confidence, ignoring Bryce's taunts and his friends' glares. The whispers about her grew louder, but so did the murmurs about Bryce. People were starting to see cracks in his armor. His jokes weren't landing as hard. His friends weren't laughing as easily, and his need to target Maya was starting to look desperate. Bryce, sensing the shift, doubled down. At lunch one day, he called out to her across the cafeteria, his voice loud enough to draw every eye in the room. "Hey Maya, still crying about your locker? Or is your big bad daddy going to come fight your battles again?" The room went quiet. Maya paused, then turned to face him, her expression calm. "It's funny," she said, her voice carrying clearly. "You keep bringing up my dad like you weren't the one shaking in your boots when you saw him." The cafeteria erupted in gasps and stifled laughter. Bryce's face reddened, his fists clenching. "You think you're tough because you've got some famous guy backing you up?" he snapped. "You're nothing without him." Maya tilted her head, unfazed. "I don't need to prove anything to you, Bryce. You're doing a great job of proving who you are, all on your own." She turned back to her lunch, leaving him to stew in the silence that followed. The other students exchanged glances, some smirking, others whispering. Bryce's grip on his kingdom was slipping, and he knew it. That afternoon, Maya wasn't surprised to find Bryce waiting for her in the parking lot, alone this time. His friends were nowhere in sight, and his usual smirk was gone. "What's your deal, Williams?" he asked, his voice low, almost genuine. "Why don't you fight back?" Maya crossed her arms, studying him. "Because I don't need to." He scoffed, but there was no confidence behind it. "That's not how it works. People like me push, and people like you either push back or get crushed." Maya stepped closer, her voice steady. "Or maybe people like me wait. We let people like you keep pushing, keep making mistakes, keep showing everyone who you really are. And when you're standing in the ruins of your own mess, we don't have to do anything. You've already lost." Bryce stared at her, and for the first time, Maya saw uncertainty in his eyes. But he covered it quickly, forcing a smirk. "You think you've got me all figured out? You don't know anything about me." Maya smiled faintly. "I know you're scared, Bryce. Not of me, of being nothing. Of waking up one day and realizing no one cares about you unless you're tearing someone else down. His jaw tightened, his hands balling into fists. For a moment, she thought he might lash out, but he didn't. Instead, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the parking lot, feeling the weight of her words settle between them. That night, Maya sat at the kitchen table, swirling the ice in her glass. Veng watched her from across the room, his arms crossed. "Something happened today," she said. "With Bryce?" She nodded. "I think I got under his skin," Veng smirked. "Good," Maya exhaled. "But he's not done." Veng sat down across from her, his expression serious. "You could end this now, you know. Call him out, humiliate him in front of everyone. You've got more power than you think." Maya considered it, then shook her head. "No, I want him to end it himself." Veng grinned, leaning back. "Smart kid," Maya smirked. "I learned from the best." 2 days later, the final blow came. Maya walked into school to find the halls buzzing with a different kind of energy. Students were gathered around Bryce's locker, whispering, laughing, taking photos. Plastered across the door were printed screenshots, private messages, comments, conversations. Every cruel, hateful thing Bryce had ever said about his classmates, his teachers, even his friends, was laid bare for everyone to see. Racist remarks, sexist jokes, betrayals of trust, all recent, all undeniable. Bryce shoved through the crowd, his face pale, his hands shaking as he tore the papers down. But it was too late. The damage was done. Students stared at him, some with disgust, others with pity. His friends backed away, unwilling to be associated with the fallout. He turned, his eyes locking onto Maya's. "You did this," he hissed, his voice trembling with rage. Maya leaned against a locker, her expression calm. "Did I? You think you're so smart," he spat. "You think this makes you better than me?" She stepped forward, her voice steady. "No, Bryce, this just shows everyone who you really are." His fists clenched, his whole body shaking, but he didn't move. He couldn't. Anything he did now would only make it worse. Maya turned and walked away, leaving him to face the wreckage of his reputation alone. That afternoon, Veng was waiting outside in his Charger, his expression unreadable. Maya slid into the passenger seat, exhaling slowly. "It's done," she said. Veng smirked, without throwing a single punch. Maya smiled, leaning back. Didn't need to. He started the engine, the Charger rumbling to life. "So what?" Now Maya thought for a moment, then grinned. "Now I get to enjoy high school," Veng laughed, shaking his head. "That's my girl." As they drove away, Maya felt the weight of the past few weeks lift. She hadn't won by being louder or stronger or crueler. She'd won by being patient, by letting Bryce's own actions destroy him. And as the school faded into the distance, she knew one thing for certain: the quiet ones were always the ones to watch.